Watch right now on the Front News Project. The special operation, Pipe. The Russian army is suffocating in the gas pipeline in Kursk region. They won't stop at anything. Moscow out trembled. Drones are tearing apart military facilities in the Russian capital. Hell in Kryvyi Rih and Kharkiv. Putin's Russia continues to kill peaceful Ukrainians. Fiery, hot, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch right now. The fourth year of the full-scale war, the war that Vladimir Putin and his pack unleashed on Ukrainian soil. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people continues in their fight for freedom. Greetings, this Mao is Front News with you, Vladimir Timoshenko. In the next 30 minutes, you'll get the truth about the war, which our journalists are uncovering from the hottest battle zones. So, are you ready? Then we begin. And we start right away with exclusive material. Kursk region, the Ministry of Murder, also known as the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, proudly announces their army has once again taken control of the city of Surgut. I'm judging. The truth is, the war criminals are, as always, silent about the main issue. The Russian army has almost completely destroyed the city with airstrikes. And also this week there was the so-called pipe operation. That's when the Russians tried to advance through the gas pipeline. Some of them suffocated right in that gas pipeline. All the details coming up next. It's intense near Kursk. Russia has redeployed one of its most powerful drone units, Rubicon, here. Western press reports on hundreds of targeted strikes on the logistics of the Ukrainian armed forces.
At the moment, the tactic of the Russian occupiers is to try to take fire or direct control of the locations of the Ukrainian defense forces in order to minimize the possibility of personnel rotation, ammunition supply, and evacuation of the wounded. With the commander, they are carrying out the fire strikes on the bridges in the rear of the Ukrainian defense forces to cut off the units of the Ukrainian defense forces from the rear logistics supply bases.
According to a soldier of the Ukrainian armed forces, the occupiers managed to penetrate 700 meters from the Ukrainian border in the Sumy region.
According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, this is the only verified information. No sources of information have been recorded regarding a massive breakthrough of Russian troops in the Sumy region. The enemy is operating with sabotage and reconnaissance groups and small infantry units. The main task is to establish a foothold in Ukrainian territory. It's more of an informational effect, isn't it? We are talking about the so-called mass breakthrough. State border of Ukraine near the populated areas. The points Novenka and Zhuravka.
But the Russians are also suffering colossal losses. Putin's army planned a grand offensive, trying to approach the court through the gas pipeline branch.
What do you guys say? Where are we? Pipe. The pipe that leads to the court, right?
I never would have thought I'd be carrying water for 12 kilometers through a pipe. What's going on? Is there a blockage or something?
No, I'll really give it a try. What do you say, bro? Hello? This is how we go.
Look, armed criminals have started to infiltrate the main gas pipeline in small groups. However, the plan that the Russians initially boasted about has turned into a real disaster for them. Some of the soldiers in the pipe simply suffocated, while other participants in the super operation were eliminated by the ISU.
There will be no peace for Russians, even in the temporarily occupied Crimea. Ukrainian military forces are preparing a new operation that will finally and completely destroy the Kerch Bridge.
God loves threes, and I don't rule out the possibility of such a scenario being realized. Moreover, we're talking about strengthening or the possible strengthening of Ukraine's diplomatic position. We're talking about the Crimean, or as it's called, the Kerch Bridge. This is a key logistical component for the Russian occupying troops, both in terms of the redeployment of heavy armored vehicles and the supply of civilian infrastructure for the occupying administration in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. Therefore, the elimination of the illegal engineering structure effectively cuts off the Russian grouping in Crimea from their rear supply bases. And there have been serious strikes in several regions of Russia. Explosions occurred at the Novokubishevsk oil refinery in the Samara region. This oil refinery produces fuel for Russia's hypersonic aircraft. Maybe it was produced. Hey, Uncle Kolya, how crazy is that? For the first time during the large-scale war, drones in the armed forces of Ukraine attacked Chuvashia. A drone attacked the Brevestnik plant, which belongs to Rosneft and is used for oil storage. And while Ukrainian drones are haunting Russia, billionaire Elon Musk stated that the Starlink system is the backbone of the Ukrainian army. And if he shuts it down, the front line in the armed forces of Ukraine will simply collapse. There are currently around 40,000 Starlink systems in service. The needs of the Ukrainian defense forces. It should be noted that even the combined capacity of all European telecom operators will not be able to compensate these losses. But at the same time, I will note that Elon Musk said that he will never turn off the Starlink network for the Ukrainian military, even if he doesn't agree with Ukraine's policies.
And also this week, as is tradition, there were so-called explosions happening on the territory of Russia. Of course, the drone attack on military facilities in Moscow and the Moscow region stands out on its own. By the way, there were several of them. Russian air defense forces say they intercepted 69 Ukrainian drones at the beginning of the week that were moving towards Moscow. As a result, now probably of the largest attack on the Russian capital throughout the entire period of the war. By the way, it was even suspended the operations of Zhukovsky and Domodedovo airports in the Moscow region. All the details of this effective and very timely attack are right now in our report. Moscow and the region are under fire. Russia has faced the largest attack during the Great War. Russian media reports mention 337 drones. It was also restless today in relatively safe Russian territories. Russian officials stated that on the night of March 11th, dozens of drones attacked the capital of Russia, Moscow. As of this morning, they allegedly shot down 69 drones. The airports in the city were not operational. There are damages and casualties. The attack has been called the most massive on Russia since the beginning of the full-scale war. The Russian Ministry of Defense stated that they intercepted and destroyed 337 Ukrainian drones. Of these, 91 over the Moscow region, 126 over Kursk. Drones were also shot down in Belgorod, Ryazan, Kaluga, Lipetsk, Oryol, and other regions. This makes it clear to both the Russian side and accordingly the American side that the Ukrainian defense forces and consequently the Ukrainian political leadership still have what you might call trump cards in the negotiation process. And this is specifically about striking deep into the territory of the Russian Federation. Both aerodynamic and aeroballistic targets. The head of the State Duma's Defense Committee called for a response to today's attack and to strike Ukraine with the hazelnuts that the Russian leadership has often used to scare people. But one really useful thing for Russians that's being discussed in Russia is a proposal from insurance companies to include coverage for drone strikes in their policies. Well, now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kharkiv and Kupiansk fronts. The enemy continues their military terror. On the Kharkiv front, the aggressors attacked our defenders' positions near Volchansk and Doroshevka 3 times. 1 clash is ongoing. The enemy attacked our positions twice in the Kupiansk direction near Golubovka and Boguslavka. 1 clash is ongoing. And here. Well, the battered Ukrainian Kharkiv is recovering after a traditionally brutal and cowardly rocket strike. An enemy ballistic missile hit a residential area. The blast wave damaged apartment buildings, garages, cars, and a kindergarten. There are injured people. All the details are in the report from the scene by TSN journalist Yulia Boyko. Do not enter the house. I got ready, kid, and came down.
These footage was taken just a few minutes after the missile strike in the middle of a residential area. The missile exploded in the yard just a few meters from this house. The patrols are helping to evacuate people, most of whom woke up from the explosions. It went off only 5 minutes after the warning about the missile threat.
I was lying down, there was an explosion, and the window fell on me, that's it. My wife got hit, it was just shrapnel. She was just about to add some tea and head to work, and it hit, well, just like that, an explosion, and that's it. It just blew out my window.
Debris from the garages, smoke. That's it. Maybe I could have seen more.
At the impact site, there's a huge crater. Debris is scattered all around. The blast wave shattered windows and glass. Furniture was thrown around in the apartment, and the plaster came off. A total of 9 apartment buildings and a kindergarten were damaged. The garages were destroyed and the cars were burned. The number of injured was increasing. Every half hour, at first they reported 4, then 5, and by the afternoon it was already 8.
They have non-life-threatening injuries, bruises to internal organs, limbs, and cuts from glass.
Russians used the Iskander-M missile, say law enforcement. Near the impact site, there's only residential development.
He found out what the tibia is for. Again, we see that this is not a military target, there are no military personnel here, and there are no reasons to launch a missile strike here. Even in wartime, this is very low, and it's a war crime that we will document.
Rescuers have been clearing the rubble since early morning, checking the damaged houses and garages. The residents have come together, collecting debris and boarding up the broken windows with plywood. Those whose homes are now uninhabitable have been provided with temporary shelter.
The city of Kryvyi Rih also faced intense shelling this week. Russians killed a 47-year-old woman, a mother of 2. Another 15 people were injured. Medics are currently fighting for the lives of 5 victims. In the morning, the enemy attacked the city with ballistic missiles. One missile landed near the hotel, and the second one hit it directly. Moreover, the second strike, which is important, happened just as rescuers have arrived. The Russians acted exactly like that, deliberately, treacherously, and cynically. More about the consequences of the strike will be shared by TSN journalist Anastasia Nevernaya.
A partially destroyed hotel with the symbolic name Friendship. The ground is covered with shards of glass and debris. In the morning, 2 ballistic missiles hit here. A video of the moment of impact has surfaced online. Besides the hotel, around 30 surrounding apartment buildings were also hit. Several yards are covered in glass, and there are hardly any intact windows left. Victoria and her 2 daughters are recovering from the shock. The woman says she was just making breakfast for her youngest when the explosion went off.
I was saved by the open window. The girls were far from the balcony. A little bit flew out, but the youngest was really scared and cried.
Victoria didn't want to tempt fate a second time. I went to the shelter with the kids.
The second explosion. We didn't catch it because we went to the shelter as soon as my father arrived and took us. I don't know, maybe they felt it. Last time there were also 2 explosions.
Lyudmila was just drinking coffee in the kitchen when the blast wave threw her into the next room.
I found myself in another room, that's how hard I was thrown. I hurt my hand a little here. The windows here and on that side are completely shattered. If they don't do it for me today, I'll just sleep here on the bench.
6 months ago, the occupiers already struck this hotel. Since then, there have been no residents here. But the apartments of most locals have been hit by these attacks for the second time. Alexander's father miraculously survived this time.
I had plywood after the first strike, it saved me. But if he had been sleeping, he would have been caught in it.
A woman died in the trolley bus that was passing by the site of the attack. She was an employee of the district military administration. She was just on her way to work. Another injured person from that same trolley bus is being rescued in the hospital right now. In these footage, you can see the paramedics at work. A total of 15 people were injured. 9 of them were hospitalized, 5 in serious condition.
We have injuries and trauma.
Blast injuries, shrapnel wounds, gunshot wounds to the torso, limbs, abdomen, and head.
This hotel has become the 4th in Kryvyi Rih that the occupiers have targeted since the beginning of the full-scale invasion.
Well, now we move to the long-suffering Pokrovsk front. The situation here is traditionally heated to the limit. Since the beginning of the day, the occupiers have already launched 32 attacks on the positions of our defenders in the areas of the settlements. Yelizavetovka, Promen, Lisovka, Kotlina, Udakhnaya, Uspenovka, Novo-Alexandrovka, Novosergevka, Kotlyarovka, Alexeyevka, Andreevka. The defense forces holding back the enemy's onslaught have repelled 25 attacks from the adversary. 7 clashes are still ongoing. The enemy's aviation also carried out airstrikes on Pokrovsk. And now about a topic that shook the information space this week. The US suspended military aid to Ukraine and intelligence sharing. After a few days, everything returned to normal. The Kremlin terrorists celebrated too soon. But we still decided to figure out how critically important military assistance from Washington is for the armed forces of Ukraine. This is exactly what our next piece is about.
Shot. Subtitles made by Dematozo.
This is the long-range self-propelled howitzer, M109. The American artillery system is very demanding, but at the same time it works excellently, assure the Ukrainian soldiers. Almost every... The 155-meter shell hits almost right on target. At the moment, in one of the hottest areas near Chasov Yar, this self-propelled howitzer is firing almost around the clock. But soon, due to a shortage of shells, the situation may change.
It is destroyed by artillery, the use of barrel artillery and the salvo fire system. About 80% of the enemy's ground targets. They are very important and necessary.
If there aren't enough shells, we'll have to look for them literally all over the world. 155mm caliber, 152mm shells are being sought in the countries of the former Warsaw Pact or in Asian or African states that are friendly to the former USSR. That's right, over 1.5 million ammunition rounds have already arrived in Ukraine as part of the Czech initiative. These supplies will continue at least until April. In case of restrictions or shortages in shell supplies, Ukraine can partially replace them with drones. And we already have such experience.
We did this a year ago when we found ourselves without American assistance. In 2024, when the enemy was advancing quite intensively in the east, Ukraine used a large number of drones and slowed down the enemy's progress.
Almost all the aid has been approved by President Biden's administration, and that includes the $9 billion worth of weapons that Ukraine has already received. And that's where the aid stopped after the new Trump administration decided to halt all weapon supplies and the exchange of intelligence data. Kyiv has practically found itself face-to-face with an armed and brutal enemy. Now Ukraine will have to quickly look for alternatives.
The situation is complicated. She demands that we switch to the resources of our allies rather than relying on what the Americans currently envision, their administration and their calculations of their own capabilities. So we have powerful world-class production of electronic warfare stations, but all of this requires time, resources and so on.
It's very difficult. In Ukraine, there will be a lack of intelligence data, as American satellites provide, among other things, the ability to gather information on the movements of Russians, their logistics, detect headquarters, and the concentration of equipment to strike it. And although Britain and France are ready to share information, their systems and reconnaissance planes don't get that close to the front line. Moreover, Ukraine is deprived of the ability to respond in time to the takeoffs of strategic bombers and missile launches. As a result, the civilian population and infrastructure will suffer.
A couple of days ago, the French deployed a drone strategic reconnaissance aircraft over the Black Sea. It's in neutral waters. So this is just an example of how the French and our other allies are trying to help. But of course, we don't have the same capabilities in space as we do in the air.
According to the expert, Ukraine is capable of partially replacing American weaponry, especially when it comes to artillery shells or American tanks. However, experts emphasize that among the assistance from the US that is being extensively used on the battlefield, there is a unique component that is practically irreplaceable. First of all, this concerns long-range weapons, guided aerial bombs, cluster munitions and missiles for highly mobile multiple launch rocket systems. HIMARS.
They took a breath at the front line and allowed for some opportunities, including striking at a certain depth into the enemy's defensive positions, hitting their warehouses and concentrations of personnel, as well as command posts. HIMARS can be replaced with drones, and we can increase the supply of long-range artillery, even if it's not up to 80 kilometers. At least we can manage 25 to 35 kilometers and so on.
But the biggest problem for Ukraine is the air defense umbrella. Right now, American Patriot systems are protecting the Ukrainian sky. Missiles and launchers are produced only by the US. and it's practically impossible to replace them, even if we manage to purchase European analogs, which are not as long-range as the Patriots.
SAM PET, for example, has a shorter range, but these are more modern air defense missile systems than the Patriots. France and Italy have a certain amount, but they are considering issues related to their own security.
U.S. Special Representative for the President, Keith Kellogg, stated that the weapons already provided to Ukraine are enough to last until summer. What will happen next is unknown at this point. However, according to the expert, the halt in deliveries also has a reverse process when the pause can affect the income of American companies producing weapons.
American companies, they calculate if they tell you that you have produced such and such a quantity, you have invested money, but at the same time you do not receive any profit and you cannot sell it. Of course, this is not in the interest of any company.
Besides Ukraine, there are no other buyers willing to purchase weapons in the quantities that large U.S. corporations produce. So, a potential rebellion among manufacturers within the United States could very well work in our favor. And the pause in U.S. assistance to Ukraine may not last long.
And right now, an analysis of the situation on the Kramatorsk and Donetsk fronts. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, Bakhmut, and maim here as well. Currently, there is one enemy attack happening in the Kramatorsk direction. The enemy is attacking in the area of Chasov Yar. Our defenders are putting up a worthy resistance against the enemy. In the Donetsk direction, Russian occupiers conducted 11 assaults on our defenders' positions in the areas of Donetsk and Druzhba. 3 clashes are still ongoing. 60 extremely severe fractures. The most seriously injured after the enemy strike on Dobropilya, which is in the Pokrovsk district, are currently being rescued in the city of Dnipro. After the attack on the city in the Donetsk region, 11 people were transported to the neighboring region. The medics have already performed dozens of surgeries. The condition of 4 injured individuals is very serious. KTSN correspondent Olga Pavlovskaya will tell us more in a chilling piece of material.
A mother won't let go of her son's hand in intensive care, 28-year-old Nikolai. Finally, he came to himself after the terrible strike. He's the best, my sunshine. And she didn't know that. I didn't even know that today isn't March 8th. He wasn't congratulating anyone today. He was actually at a friend's house on March 8th. When the Russians delivered the first strike, a humanitarian mission worker immediately rushed to save the victims. He knew there was a woman in the ruined house who couldn't get out on her own.
She was just less mobile and couldn't run. I was helping her across the avenue when the second explosion of a cluster munition happened. It sounds like fireworks, but it's really bad.
It was a combined attack by the Russians on Dobropilya, March 7. After the first strike, the occupiers hit again at the people who were trying to escape and help others. 11 people have died and another 50 are injured.
We preliminarily understand that the enemy struck the city with missiles, Iskander-M, Tornado-S, and also launched the UAV Geran-2. Residential buildings came under fire from the enemy army.
Severely injured Nikolai was brought to Dnipro unconscious and with massive blood loss. The doctors operated on him all weekend to save his life.
The diaphragm is torn. There's a lung contusion, a kidney is shattered, and unfortunately a fragment is lodged in the spine. Tears are flowing. From his eyes you can tell he wants to walk.
But what was the first thing he asked as soon as he came to? Whether they had saved the elderly woman he was helping during the attack. I called myself. The woman is alive. She's elderly. And with crutches. She received help. 11 of the most severely injured were brought to Dnipro. 3 of them are still in life-threatening condition.
We counted a total of 60 severe fractures among all of them. There is a woman in extremely critical condition. Her entire intestine is shattered. She is 64 years old. There is also a 33-year-old woman completely battered by debris who is on a ventilator.
Today alone, more than 10 surgeries are scheduled for the wounded from Dobropoli. Among them is Nikolai, so that he can get back on his feet.
Everything will be all right. Thank you.
He is just waiting for his fiancée, with whom he was saving civilians from hotspots as part of a humanitarian mission. But he admits the wedding will have to be postponed for now.
Here you are.
I need to recover, help people, and only then celebrate the wedding. The dream is for the war to end as soon as possible, so that one can plan their life.
After recovering, Nikolai hopes he will still be able to be useful and will save those in need once again.
Well, now let's move to the front lines in the Huliaipol and Kharkiv directions of the Russian world. And here it continues to destroy, kill, and maim. In the Huliaipol direction, our defenders repelled 4 enemy attacks in the areas of Novopol and Novoselki. Another battle is ongoing. The settlements of Novopol, Zaleznikne, and Huliaipol were subjected to airstrikes with unguided missiles. If the enemy were to drop bombs in the areas of the settlements of Shevchenko and Freefield. In the Kharkiv direction, the occupiers are attacking in the area of Stepne, Pyatikatkia, Kamenske, as well as towards Novoandriivka. With the support of assault aviation, currently 1 enemy attack has been repelled and 7 more are ongoing. The roar of gunfire, coordinated work, and life between battles. This is exactly what the everyday life of the artillerymen of the 56th Separate Motorized Infantry Mariupol Brigade looks like. They work proactively, striking where the enemy definitely doesn't expect it. In the short breaks between firing, they repair equipment, set up positions, and share their thoughts about service. This is exactly what the next material from our colleagues at the Briz TV and radio company is about.
These hours. I'm on duty. We were working towards Grigorievka. Yeah, landing. We spotted movement. We were working on the infantry, not letting them get through. As usual, they come in groups. They're coming into the city and out of the city loud and clear. So we cover our infantry, trying to hit accurately. The last shots were successful. Before that, we hit the target.
This is clearly a new track.
I'm new to them. It's my 3rd time at a firing position. I like it when you hit. True, the first few times I had to get used to it very loudly, but I'm already used to it. I'm little. I can already slip under the barrel and over the barrel. I don't even notice it anymore. I had, for example, a BC, it burned for a very long time. There was also a fat target for the 3rd crew. The gunner hit it right on, the machine gunner was sitting there, aimed perfectly, and we hit it. We are proud, but I have been here for almost 3 years now, and I am already used to all of this. Before it was interesting, like, show us, show us. I like artillery. The best part is when you're running and there's a disco going on above you. Such a rush of adrenaline. Well, just 2 or 3 shots and I understood everything. I mean, I was loading. I got it right the first time. Well, I gradually understood what and where and how. I was with the infantry. You understand what the situation is like there, what infantry is, what artillery is, of course. There is a difference. It's all teamwork. Teamwork. You can't do anything here without a team. We all work together as one. Guys, we have a good crew. It's a sin to complain. They'll tell you, they'll guide you. Everything's good. We have a great crew. When it comes to support, it's a sin to complain. Not hungry, not naked, not barefoot. You see, everyone has their own mind. Everyone has their own way of thinking. You can't impose your thoughts on them. If he doesn't want to, then I beg you, but there won't be any business. Well, it's scary, of course. As they say, those who say it's not scary have never seen any of this. Everyone is scared, absolutely everyone. We're human, of course it's scary. But still, we'll have to fight. New people who come in, they don't know much, they don't understand. We've been here for 3 years now, we know more, we started earlier. So I would recommend not to be afraid, that's all.
That's all for today, but very soon on the Front News program. New, unique materials from our journalists from the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.